Technicians, the screen in front of us are not working. Well, this one here. Delegates, please take your seat and put your cards in the machine. Technicians, I don't see if we have a quorum. Buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon. We have a quorum, so we will resume the plenary afternoon session. We stopped with item 50, disposal of confiscated specimens, and we'll now move on to item 51, quotas for leopard hunting trophies, Panthera pardus. I give the floor to the chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. Draft amendments to Resolution Conference 1014, Rev CoP19, on quotas for leopard hunting trophies and skins for personal use. In paragraph 7 of document CoP19 Doc 51 were agreed by consensus. 3 draft decisions in the comments of the Secretariat in document CoP19 Doc 51, with amendments recorded in document CoP19 Com1 Rec 16, were agreed by consensus. It was also agreed by consensus to delete decisions 18.165, 18.167, 18.169A, and 18.170. Thank you, Chair.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair of Committee 1. Are there any requests for the floor? If not, the recommendations of Committee 1 are adopted. Thank you, Chair of Committee 1. Let's move on to the next item, 52, transport of live specimens, improving implementation of the transport regulations. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. The amendments to Resolution Conf 10.21 Rev CoP16 on transport of live specimens, with amendments recorded in CoP19 Com2 Rec 13, were accepted by consensus. Draft decisions in CoP19 Doc 52, with amendments recorded in CoP19 Com2 Rec 13, were agreed.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, Chair of Committee 2. Are there any requests for the floor? I see Israel. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Just one point of clarification, please. The previous item was reported that the recommendations and the decisions that were adopted by this committee just now, or by the plenary, appear in record number 16. But number 16 has not been published yet on the web. So in essence, we just confirmed something that we haven't seen that came out of the committee. And we just wanted to understand what the procedure is then in terms of summary records that haven't yet been published but are been approved by the plenary.
Gracias, Israel.
Thank you, Israel. I give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. As with previous conferences of parties, where the summary records have not been completed, we do refer to it in the record that we are reading out. The summary records will be published on the CITES website, and the parties will be given 2 to 3 weeks to provide their comments on the summary records, and those will then be made available as the full record for the meeting. Unfortunately, there is not enough time for us to wrap up all the summary records in advance of plenary. So the last few summary records will only be made available after the COP.
Thank you, Secretary. Israel, is that okay? Continuamos.
Let us continue. We're now moving on to 52. We've just heard the report from the Chair of Committee 2. If there are no requests for the floor, then item 52 is adopted. Now we'll consider recommendations from Committee 1 and 2 relating to exceptions and special trade provisions. I invite the chairs to report the recommendations relating to these agenda items to the Conference of the Parties. Item 53, Review of CITES provisions related to trade in specimens of animals and plants not of wild source. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. Minor amendments to Resolution Conf 10.16 Rev on specimens of animal species bred in captivity were agreed by consensus, as well as draft decisions with amendments as reflected in CoP19 COM2 Rec 15.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any requests for the floor? If not, the recommendations of Committee 2 are adopted on item 53. Let us move on to item 54, review of the provisions of Resolution Conf 17.7 on review of trade in animal specimens reported as produced in captivity. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. Draft amendments to Resolution Conference 17.7, Rev CoP18, on the review of trade in animal specimens reported as produced in captivity, in Annex 1 of document CoP19 Doc 54, with some amendments recorded in document COM1 Rec 2, Rev 1, were agreed. 3 draft decisions in Annex 2 of document CoP19 Doc 54 were also agreed. Finally, it was agreed to delete decisions 18.176 and 18.177, all by consensus. However, Chair, I need to draw the attention of plenary to one outstanding item. As I noted in debate, and is recorded in COP19, COM1 Rec 2, there is a sentence in the revised resolution contained in Annex 1 of COP19, Doc 54, that is bracketed and in strike-through text because it relates to the funding of work done under the resolution by the Secretariat, and so needed discussions of the Budget Committee to conclude before the conference can conclude what to do with that paragraph. I understand no core funds have been allocated to this work, and so the original text of this paragraph needs to be retained in the resolution. For clarity, it is paragraph 1 in the resolution, and it reads, directs the Secretariat to implement the present resolution subject to available resources. And that text needs the brackets removed and the strike-through removed. Thank you, Chair.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, Chair. We have taken note of your comments. Are there any requests for the floor? I see none. Therefore, China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Concerning proposed amendments to ResConf 17.7 on review of trade in animal specimens reported as produced in captivity, in its operative part, Stage 1, identification of species country combinations for review, little b, it shows that referred to it by parties is replaced by justified with supporting documented evidence. However, the proposed change is not intended to this replacement, but to insert justified with supporting documented evidence after referred to it by parties. Please make this correction accordingly. Thank you, Chair.
China, ¿puede repetir?
China, could you please repeat how you would like this paragraph to read, please?
Thank you, Chair. So I read the clear version of little b. The Secretariat shall also compile any other relevant information made available to it with respect to concerns
China tiene la palabra.
You have the floor, China.
Sorry, I repeat. For little b of stage 1, the Secretariat shall also compile any other relevant information made available to it with respect to concerns about captive production, including any cases referred to it by parties justified with supporting documented evidence or identified from the review of significant trade under Res. Conf 12.8 on review of significant trade in specimens of Appendix 2 species, all available in relevant reports, including the global conservation status of species published in the IUCN Red List of threatened species or noted as not evaluated. Thank you, Chair.
Gracias, China.
Thank you, China. Thank you for raising this point. Yes, this was taken into consideration during the committee's discussions, so we are taking it into account in this document. If there are no further requests for the floor, then the recommendations of Committee 1 are adopted with the changes as set out by China, which had already been discussed in Committee 1. Thank you. We now move on to item 55, registration of operations that breed Appendix 1 animal species in captivity for commercial purposes. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. A draft decision was agreed as recorded in CoP19 COM2 Rec 13.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any requests for the floor? I see none. The recommendations of Committee 2 are therefore adopted. Thank you, Chair. We move on to item 56, guidance on the term artificially propagated. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. Draft decisions on guidance on the term artificially propagated in document CoP19 Doc 56 with amendments in CoP19 COM2 Rec 15 were agreed by consensus.
Muchas gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any requests for the floor? I see none. The recommendations of Committee 2 are therefore adopted. Thank you, Chair. We'll move on to item 57, specimens grown from wild collected seeds or spores that are deemed to be artificially propagated. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. The deletion of decisions 18.179 to 181 were accepted.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any requests for the floor? I see none. Therefore, the recommendations of Committee 2 are adopted. Thank you, Chair. Recommendations from Committee 1 and 2 relating to species-specific matters will be considered next. I invite the chairs to report the recommendations relating to these agenda items to the Conference of Parties. Let's start with species-specific matters. Item 58, West African vultures. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. 6 draft decisions in Annex 1 of document CoP19 Doc 58 with an amendment recorded in document CoP19 COM1 Rec 12 were agreed by consensus. It was also agreed by consensus to delete decisions 18.186 to 18.192. Thank you, Chair.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any requests for the floor? I see none. Therefore, the recommendations of Committee 1 are adopted. Thank you, Chair. We now move on to item 59, illegal trade in cheetahs. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. the draft decisions in document CoP19 Doc 59 with amendments recorded in CoP19 Com2 Rec 2 were accepted by consensus.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. It's CITES. I had said the wrong word in Spanish. Are there any requests for the floor? I see none. Therefore, the recommendations of Committee 2 are adopted. Let's move on to item 60, Conservation of Amphibians. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. 3 draft decisions in Annex 1 to document CoP19 Doc 60 and the deletion of decisions 18.194 to 18.196 were agreed by consensus. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Chair. Are there any requests for the floor? I see none. Therefore, the recommendations of Committee 1 are adopted. Now, let us move on to item 61, eels. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. 4 draft decisions in document CoP19 Com 1.4 were agreed by consensus. Decisions 18.197 to 19.202 were agreed to be deleted by consensus. Thank you, Chair.
Gracias.
Thank you, sir. Would any delegation like to take the floor? I see no requests for the floor. The Committee 1 recommendations are adopted. We now move on to 62, agar wood producing taxa. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. Documents 62.1 and 62.2 were considered together. 2 draft decisions on this matter, found in document CoP19 Com 1.10, were agreed by consensus. It was also agreed by consensus to delete decisions 18.203 and 18.204. Thank you, Chair.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, sir. Are there any requests for the floor? I see no requests for the floor. The Committee 1 recommendations are adopted. We move now to item 63, Boswellia. I now give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. 2 draft decisions found in document CoP19 Com 1.11 were agreed by consensus. It was also agreed by consensus to delete decisions 18.205 to 18.208. Thank you, Chair.
Gracias,
Thank you, sir. Are there any requests for the floor? I don't see any requests for the floor. Committee 1 recommendations are adopted. We move on to 64 now, marine turtles. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. A draft resolution and a draft revised decision were agreed by consensus, and these can be found in document CoP19 Com 1.4. It was also agreed to delete decisions 18.210 and 18.216, also by consensus. Thank you, Chair.
Gracias.
Thank you, sir. Would any delegation like to take the floor? I don't see any requests for the floor. The Committee 1 recommendations are adopted. We now move on to 65, sharks and rays. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. 6 draft decisions in document CoP19 Com 1.8 with amendments shown in CoP19 Com 1 Rec 16 were agreed by consensus. It was also agreed to delete decisions 18.218 to 18.225, also by consensus. Thank you.
Gracias,
Thank you. Would any delegation like to take the floor? I don't see any requests for the floor. The Committee 1 recommendations are adopted. Let's move on to the next item, which is item 66 and 66.1, elephants and implementation of Resolution 1010, Rev CoP19 on trade in elephants. Trade in elephant specimens. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. As recorded in CoP19 COM2 Rec 6, Rev 1, the committee accepted the following by consensus. Decision 18.118 and revised decisions 18.117 and 18.119 on closure of domestic ivory markets, amended draft decisions on trade in mammoth ivory, amended draft decisions on trade in Asian elephants, Elephas maximus, and new and revised draft decisions on stocks and stockpiles, elephant ivory. The deletion of decisions 18.120, 18.121, 18.227, 18.182, and 18.183 was also agreed by consensus.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair of Committee 2. Would any delegation like to take the floor? I don't see any requests for the floor. The Committee 2 recommendations are adopted. We now move on to 66.2, ivory stockpiles, and 66.2.1, ivory stockpiles, implementation of Resolution Conf 1010, Rev CoP18 on trade in elephant specimens. I would like to give the floor to the Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. Draft decisions in document CoP19 Doc 66.2.1 with amendments as recorded in CoP19 COM2 Rec 8 Rev 1 were accepted by consensus.
Gracias,
Thank you, Madam. Would any delegation like to take the floor? I don't see any requests for the floor. The Committee 2 recommendations are adopted. The next item is 62.2.2. 66.2.2, establishing a fund accessible to range states upon non-commercial disposal of ivory stockpiles. I would like to give the floor to the Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. The draft decisions in CoP19 COM2 9 with amendments as recorded in CoP19 COM2 Rec 16 were rejected after a vote with 24 parties in favour, 50 against and 33 abstentions.
Muchas gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would any delegation like to take the floor? Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Kenya is not opening the debate on this subject, but will want to make a statement for the record of the COP, with your indulgence, Chair. Madam Chair, Kenya is a major elephant range state, hosting the fourth largest savanna elephant population globally. Madam Chair, Kenya developed this concept on establishment of a fund accessible to range states upon non-commercial disposal on elephant stockpiles in consultation with 30 other African range states. Madam Chair, the intention is to develop an innovative way of mobilizing much-needed resources to support sustainable conservation, including ensuring human-elephant coexistence, managing impact of climate, and addressing human-elephant conflict, by disposing of our accumulating stockpiles, which are expensive and difficult to manage and secure. We had believed that CoP19 will approve we start the process of wider consultation, establishing an intersessional working group as a platform for negotiations. From the feedback, it is very clear all range states require sustainable financial resources to support conservation of elephants and other species in a sustainable way. We have noted that the concept and the process towards realizing an innovative, sustainable financing mechanism for wildlife conservation that we are proposing in document 62.2.2 may not have been well understood by a number of the range states, as evidenced in the outcome of the vote taken in Committee 2. Madam Chair, we therefore propose taking this idea forward with willing African and Asian range states and donors, but outside of CITES first. Kenya will continue to engage bilaterally with the willing range states and potential donors with a view to examining options for a funding mechanism and actualizing the objectives as proposed in CoP19 document 66.2.2. I thank you, Chair, and I request that this statement is noted in the record of plenary. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Gracias.
Thank you, Kenya. We have noted your statement. I see no further requests for the floor. We take note of Kenya's statement and adopt the Committee 2 decisions. The next item is 66.3, implementing aspects of Resolution Conf 10.10, Rev COP 18, on the closure of domestic ivory markets. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. With a vote of 39 parties in favour, 58 against and 5 abstentions, the original draft decision on the analysis of ivory seizures connected to each party with a legal domestic market for ivory, as outlined in document CoP19 Doc 66.3, was rejected. An amended draft decision was accepted, as recorded in CoP19 Com2 Rec 6 Rev 1.
Gracias.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would any delegation like to take the floor? Burkina Faso, you have the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair. Burkina Faso and its co-authors would like to come back on one aspect of our proposal. It is true that the document was accepted with an amendment to 19DD. Subject to external funding, the second will invite Mike Ettis to indicate whether an analysis of ivory seizures linked to parties and domestic ivory markets could be undertaken, and if it is feasible to undertake that analysis and include it in the CITES report to SC 78 and to COP21. Madam Chair, we would like to suggest 2 new decisions. We would like to ensure that there will be a discussion on this matter from SC 77. Now, we don't want to complicate matters by reopening this debate. We do, however, feel that the question of domestic ivory markets is a tricky one. To wait until the Standing Committee 78th meeting without any work would not be desirable. We would therefore suggest the following. First of all, the Secretariat shall, 19EE, The Secretariat shall report on the state of advancement of the analysis provided for in 19DD to the Standing Committees at its 77th meeting. And the Standing Committee shall, 19FF, the Standing Committee shall consider the report under 19EE and ask the Secretariat to take all appropriate decisions. This is what Burkina Faso and its co-authors would like to suggest with respect to the Committee 2 decision. Thank you, Madam.
Gracias.
Thank you, Burkina Faso. We would like to know if this is an amendment to the document, as the document was adopted by Committee 2. This is indeed an amendment we are suggesting. We're proposing this amendment. We agree that the decision was adopted, but we would like to see progress made by Standing Committee 77. We do not wish to wait until SC 78 or COP20 without anything having been done. This is just a way of ensuring that something is done earlier. Thank you.
Para estar claro,
In the interest of clarity, are you suggesting that this debate be reopened on 66.3? Thank you.
Burkina Faso.
Yes, indeed, Madam. So that this amendment can be proposed. Thank you.
Por las reglas de procedimiento.
Our rules of procedure require that another party to support the motion to reopen the debate. I see Mali, Togo. I see Mali and Togo.
Mali, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam. As Burkina Faso has said, Mali does support this proposal. Thank you.
Gracias, Mali.
Thank you, Mali. Could I ask if there is a party opposed to the reopening of this debate?
Técnicos, por favor, poner en blanco la.
Could I ask the technicians to clear the screen? I would now like to invite those parties opposed to reopening the debate to vote. Thank you. To press their buttons. Thank you.
Japón, tienes la palabra.
Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Japan opposes the proposal from Burkina Faso. Thank you.
Gracias, Japón.
Thank you. Zimbabwe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Zimbabwe opposes that motion.
Gracias, Zimbabwe.
Thank you. We have parties in favor of reopening the debate and parties opposed to so doing. We are going to have to vote in order to determine whether or not we are going to reopen this debate. We need a one-third majority.
Los técnicos.
Could I ask technicians to prepare for this vote?
So I'm going to change to English for a sec. This is a vote to reopen agenda item 66.3. It's a motion to reopen a debate, so it needs to be accepted by 1/3 of votes. Technicians, is the setting correct?
Chair, please repeat whether the EU will be voting as a block or by member states. Thank you.
EU, you have the word. Are you voting as a bloc or member states?
Thank you, Chair. Motions for reopen are procedural motions and are voted by the individual member states of the EU. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, EU. So technicians, give me the go. People, por favor, todos.
Could I ask parties to take their seats as we are about to vote?
We are ready, Chair.
Parties, you have 40 seconds to cast your vote. The ballot is open now. The 40 seconds are up, the ballot is closed, and technicians, you please show the results on the main screen. Technicians, please show the individual votes of the parties on the screen now. Gracias a los técnicos.
I'd like to thank the technicians. I would like to give the floor to Burkina Faso. I would invite Burkina Faso to tell us clearly which part of the document he would like to have us reopen our debate on. Thank you.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam. The reopening of this debate was so that we could put a request for amendments. We would like to be sure that something gets launched by after SC 77. This with respect to what is laid down in the document. So we have 19DD that was adopted, and the decision says, subject to external funding, the Secretariat shall engage the Mike and Etis Technical Advisory Group and Traffic to advise whether an analysis of ivory seizures connected to each party with a legal domestic market for commercial trade in ivory could be undertaken and, if feasible, carry out the analysis and include the results in the CITES committee to the Standing Committee at its 78th meeting and to the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. We would like some assurance that something gets done with respect to this decision, and we would like to propose 19EE. The Secretariat shall report on progress made in 19DD to SC 77. And then we would propose decision 19FF directed to the Standing Committee. The Standing Committee shall consider the report under 19EE and have the Secretariat take appropriate decisions take all necessary measures. That is what we are proposing, Madam. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Burkina Faso. We want to be sure that and check that there is consensus. The amendment 19EE reads that the Secretariat shall report on progress made with respect to decision 19DD to SC 77. Then we would have a new 19FF. The Standing Committee shall consider the Secretariat's report under 19EE and take all required appropriate measures.
The floor to Zambia, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Zambia, we believe domestic markets are national matters and should be left to the parties to deal with. Zambia does not think it is necessary to add on to the tasks already given to the Standing Committee on this matter. So we reject the proposal being brought by Burkina Faso.
Thank you, Sam. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. According to the report from the item 66.6 CITES, the trend of the Ivory seizure is going down after 2016. So there is no causality between legal domestic market and seizures. And also, I echo the opinion from the Zambia, and as well as the technical limitation, which is, we suppose, the reason why the Secretariat amend the original proposal. So Japan is a position to oppose to the amendment proposal by Burkina Faso. And again, our position is the considering the limited resources of the CITES, the resource is used for another matters. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Gracias.
Thank you, Japan. Bina, you have the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair. Bina wishes to take this opportunity once again to reiterate its support to the amendment put forward by Burkina Faso. This would allow us to initiate discussions early on in order to find consensus-based solutions to address this vital matter relating to the conservation of wildlife and relating to CITES in general. So we support Burkina Faso's amendment. Thank you.
Gracias, Ben.
Thank you, Bina. Niger, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Given that the sustainable management of ivory stockpiles is a matter of concern for several countries, Niger supports the amendment proposed by Burkina Faso and urges other state parties to support it. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Bina. Botswana, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Botswana does not support the amendment as proposed by Burkina Faso. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Botswana. Togo, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair. The amendment suggested by Burkina Faso aims to ensure follow-up of COP decisions by the Standing Committee at its 77th session. This is why Togo supports the amendment proposed by Burkina Faso. Thank you, Chair.
Gracias.
Thank you, Togo. Senegal, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Madame. Senegal aligns itself with the other countries supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Senegal. Thailand, you have the floor.
Yes, Thailand opposed the amendment made by the Burkina Faso.
Gracias.
Thank you. I see lots of parties wishing to take the floor. We already see that there is a lot of division on this issue, so I'll give the floor to the Secretariat. Thank you, Chair. In order to avoid a lengthy debate and a vote, perhaps we should recall the existence of Resolution 1010 on elephants in paragraph 12. The Secretariat is already mandated to report on relevant information to each standing committee meeting and each conference of the parties. Therefore, perhaps it would be superfluous to add another draft decision when it has already been mentioned in Res Conf 1010 Rev CoP18 on trade in in elephant specimens. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Gracias, Secretaria.
Thank you to the Secretariat. I give the floor to Burkina Faso. Thank you, Chair. What we requested, I don't view it as excessive. What we want to ensure is that the Secretariat can follow up on decisions as of the Standing Committee's 77th session. We wish to ensure that the Secretariat can monitor the progress made on Decision 19DD, and we want this to be reported on at Standing Committee 77 and no later. This is why we have put forward this proposal. I see that there is some opposition, but in our view, what we have proposed is not something that should be too difficult to accept. Thank you.
Gracias, Burkina.
Thank you, Burkina Faso. I will give you the floor once again to see if you would like to proceed with a vote, as there is no consensus in the room. Thank you.
Burkina Faso.
Burkina Faso, just to confirm, you would like to proceed with the vote? Yes, I think at this stage we need to vote. It's the best way to resolve this issue. If it is accepted, then, well, it is accepted, and otherwise we will stick with the decision as accepted by Committee 2. So yes, let us proceed with the vote.
Gracias, Burkina.
Thank you, Burkina Faso. This vote is on item 66.3. As this is a substantive matter, the vote will need a 2/3 majority in order to be accepted. Technicians, could you ensure that everything is ready? The European Union, how will you be voting?
Tiene la palabra la Unión.
You have the floor, the European Union.
Thank you, Chair. As indicated in the document INF 27 on agenda point 66.3 is the member states voting individually. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you. Now, I will ask the technicians to give us the green light for the vote.
Por favor, las partes.
May I request all parties to take their seats so we may proceed with the vote.
We are ready, Chair.
Vamos a.
Let us move to the vote. Malaysia, do you have a point of order?
Can we clearly again clarify what is it that we are voting for? Can you just, Chair, can you just say it clearly again? Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Malaysia. On item 66.3, the amendment by Burkina Faso in paragraph 19EE of the draft decision, which states that the Secretariat shall report to the Standing Committee at its 77th meeting on progress made under 19DD, and then 19FF directed to the Standing Committee. The Standing Committee shall consider the report under 19EE and adopt appropriate measures.
Ahora sí. Technicians. Las partes.
Parties, you have 40 seconds to vote. Voting is now open.
Se han agotado los 40 segundos.
The 40 seconds are now up. Voting is closed. Please, could the technicians display the results on the screen?
Como ven,
as you can see, the amendments were adopted by a 2/3 majority. Technicians, please could you display how each party voted on the screen?
Gracias.
Thank you. We have now seen the individual votes. Now the recommendations of Committee 2 are adopted with the amendments proposed and adopted by a 2/3 majority. Let us move on to the next item, 66.4, Trade in Live African Elephants. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. The committee considered these two documents together. As recorded in Summary Record CoP19 Com2 Rec 8 Rev 1, the proposal to amend Resolution Conf 10.10 Rev Cop 18 on trade in elephant specimens in document CoP19 Doc 66.4.1 was not accepted. An amended draft decision on a CITES dialogue meeting was accepted after a vote with 61 parties in favour, 21 against and 15 abstentions. An amended new draft decision on the export of live wild-caught African elephant was accepted after a vote with 61 parties in favour, 18 against and 18 abstentions.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any requests for the floor? Botswana, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. This statement is made on behalf of 16 SADC member states. We would like to thank the chairperson of the Committee 1 and Committee 2 for their leadership. We also want to thank the Secretariat for having facilitated our work thus far. This is not a request to reopen the debate. We simply would like to make a statement which should be included in the records of this meeting. We would like to remind parties present here today that trade restrictions cannot be imposed on parties through adoption of decisions and resolutions, especially when the affected parties are not in agreement with the recommendations made. We therefore urge parties to work on consensus on matters that have direct implication on other parties and allow for unhindered implementation of the existing listings and annotations. SADC parties commit to trade in all CITES listed species within the confines of the text of the Convention, as we have done in the past and going forward. We remain open to engage through a dialogue meeting so that the concerns of the range states of the African elephant, of which SADC member states hold the majority population, are addressed. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Botswana. Senegal, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair. I wish to reiterate Senegal's position. CITES is a convention that deals with international trade, and it's true, parties are independent and sovereign. If they want to keep their stockpiles, then that's fine. But if it goes beyond their borders, then it becomes a matter of CITES. We need to ensure the livelihoods of local populations and also protect the environment. If we can do both, then all the better. And I think that we should move forward in a spirit of consensus. Thank you.
Gracias, Senegal. Como no veo uso de la palabra y
Thank you, Senegal. I see no further requests for the floor. Botswana, we've taken due note of your statement, and the recommendations of Committee 2 are hereby adopted. Let us move on to 66.5, report on monitoring the illegal killing of elephants. Mike, Chair of Committee 2, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Document CoP19 Doc 66.5 was noted.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any requests for the floor? I see none. Therefore, the recommendations of Committee 2 are adopted. Moving on. Item 66.6, report on the Elephant Trade Information System, CITES. Chair of Committee 2, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Document CoP19 Doc 66.6 was noted.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any requests for the floor? I see none. The recommendations of Committee 2 are therefore adopted. Moving on, item 66.7, review of the National Ivory Action Plan process. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. Draft decisions in CoP19 COM2-7 with amendments recorded in CoP19 COM2 Rec 15 were agreed by consensus.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Chair. Would any delegation wish to take the floor? I see no request for the floor. Therefore, the recommendations of Committee 2 are adopted. Let us move on to the next agenda item, 67, CITES Big Cats Task Force. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. Draft decisions on the Big Cats Task Force as contained in COP19 Doc 67 with amendments recorded in COP19 COM2 Rec 11 were agreed by consensus.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any requests for the floor? I see none. Therefore, the recommendations of Committee 2 are adopted. Next item is 68, Asian Big Cats. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. Amendments to Resolution Conf 12.5, Rev COP 18, in document COP19 Doc 68 were accepted by consensus, as was the editorial amendment as reflected in COP19 COM2 Rec 10. The draft decisions contained in document COP19 Doc 68 with amendments recorded in COP19 COM2 Rec 10 were accepted by consensus. It was agreed to retain decisions 18.100, 18.101, 18.105, 18.106 and 18.107. It was also agreed to delete decisions 17.226 and 18.104.
Gracias,
Thank you, Chair. Are there any requests for the floor? I see none. Therefore, the recommendations of Committee 2 are adopted. And we move on to item 69, seahorses. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. The committee considered the two documents together. Merged draft decisions with amendments as recorded in COP19 COM2 Rec 11 were agreed by consensus. It was also agreed by consensus to delete decisions 18.228 to 18.233.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any requests for the floor? I see none. Therefore, the recommendations of Committee 2 are adopted. Next item, 70, rosewood timber species. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. 3 draft decisions contained in document COM 1.2 were agreed by consensus. Committee 1 also agreed by consensus to delete decisions 18.234 to 18.237. Thank you.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any requests for the floor? Israel, you have the floor.
Just briefly, we could ask the Secretary, the Chair of Committee 1 to repeat in which COM document that was. Thank you.
Chair of Committee 1.
Well, the document is COM 1.2. Thank you.
Al no tener...
I see no further requests for the floor. Therefore, the recommendations of Committee 1 are adopted. Let's move on to item 71, pangolins. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. The committee considered the two documents together. Draft decisions with amendments as recorded in CoP19 COM2 Rec 11 were accepted by consensus. The amendments to Resolution Conf 17.10 on conservation of and trade in pangolins in CoP19 COM2 8 as submitted by the in-session working group were agreed after a vote with 78 parties in favour, 17 against and 14 abstentions. The deletion of decision 18.240 to 18.243 was agreed by consensus.
Gracias,
Thank you, Chair. Are there any requests for the floor? I see none. Therefore, the recommendations of Committee 2 are adopted. Let us move on to the next agenda item, 72, African lion, Panthera leo. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. 5 draft decisions in Annex 1 of document CoP19 Doc 72 and a further draft decision recorded in COM1 Rec 12 were agreed by consensus. It was also agreed by consensus to delete decisions 18.244, 18.246, 18.247, 18.249 and 18.250. Thank you.
Gracias,
Thank you, Chair. Would any delegation wish to take the floor? I see no requests for the floor. Therefore, the recommendations of Committee 1 are adopted. Let us move on to item 73, Jaguar, Panthera onca. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. The committee considered the two documents together. The committee accepted the draft decisions in document CoP19 Doc 73.2 with amendments recorded in CoP19 COM2 Rec 11 by consensus. The deletion of decisions 18.252 to 18.253 was also agreed by consensus.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any requests for the floor? I see none. Therefore, the recommendations of Committee 2 are adopted, and we move on to item 74, Songbird Trade and Conservation Management. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. 4 revised decisions in Annex 1 to document CoP19 Doc 74 were agreed by consensus. Thank you.
Gracias,
Thank you, Chair. Are there any requests for the floor? I see none. Therefore, the recommendations of Committee 1 are adopted. Moving on. Item 75, Rhinoceroses. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. The committee agreed to renew decision 18.116. Draft decisions in document CoP19 Doc 75 with amendments as recorded in CoP19 COM2 Rec 11 and CoP19 COM2 Rec 16 were agreed by consensus. The deletion of decisions 18.110 to 18.115 were also agreed by consensus.
Gracias,
Thank you, Chair. Would any delegation wish to take the floor? I see no requests for the floor. Therefore, the recommendations of Committee 2 are adopted. The next item is item 76, Saiga Antelope. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. 5 draft decisions in Annex 1 of document CoP19 Doc 76 were agreed, with amendments recorded in document COM1 Rec 12. Committee 1 also agreed to delete decisions 18.270 to 18.274, all this by consensus. Thank you.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any requests for the floor? I see none. Therefore, the recommendations of Committee 1 are adopted. Item 77, Queen Conch, Strombus Gigas. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. 4 draft decisions found in Annex 1 to document CoP19 Doc 77, with an amendment recorded in document CoP19 Com1 Rec 2, Rev 1, were agreed by consensus. It was also agreed by consensus to delete decisions 18.275 to 18.280. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. Would any delegation like to take the floor? I don't see any requests for the floor. The Committee 1 recommendations are adopted. We will now move on to 78, tortoises and freshwater turtles. The Chair of Committee 2 has the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Draft decisions contained in document CoP19 Doc 78 and additional decisions recorded in CoP19 Com2 Rec 16 were agreed by consensus. The deletion of decisions 18.286 to 18.291 was also agreed by consensus.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Would any delegation like to take the floor? I don't see any requests for the floor. The Committee 2 decisions are adopted. We now move on to 79, African tree species. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. 3 decisions recorded in document CoP19 Com1 Rec 4 Rev 1 were agreed by consensus. It was also agreed by consensus to delete decisions 17.302 and 18.260 to 18.262. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, sir. The floor is open. I don't see any requests for the floor. The recommendations of Committee 1 are adopted. We're now on item 80, marine ornamental fishes. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. 2 draft decisions contained in Annex 1 to document CoP19 Doc 80, with an amendment recorded in document CoP19 Com1 Rec 3 Rev 1, were agreed by consensus. The committee also agreed by consensus to delete decisions 18.263 to 18.265 and 18.296 to 18.298. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. The floor is open. I see no requests for the floor. The recommendations of Committee 1 are adopted. We're now on item 81. 81.
Thank you, Chair. 4 draft decisions contained in Annex 1 to document CoP19 Doc 81, with amendments recorded in document CoP19 Com1 Rec 4 Rev 1, were agreed by consensus. It was also agreed by consensus to delete decision 18.299.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. Would any party like to take the floor on this item? I see no request for the floor. The Committee 1 recommendations are adopted, and we're now on 82, trade in medicinal and aromatic plant species. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. 4 decisions were agreed by consensus and can be found in document CoP19 Com 1.3. It was also agreed by consensus to delete decisions 18.300 to 18.303. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. The floor is open. I see no requests for the floor. The Committee 1 recommendations are adopted, and we're now on item 83, identifying species at risk of extinction for CITES parties. I give the floor to the Committee 1 Chair.
Thank you, Chair. 3 draft decisions found in document CoP19 COM 1.5, with amendments found in COM 1 Rec 15, were agreed by consensus. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. The floor is open. I see no requests for the floor. The Committee 1 recommendations are adopted. We're now on Committee 1 and 2 and the appendices. I would give the floor to the chairs of these committees with respect to their consideration of 84. First of all, nomenclature, and then the Animals and Plants Committee's reports. I give the floor to the chair of Committee 1.
Yeah. Draft amendments to the annex of Resolution Conference 1211 Rev CoP18 on standard nomenclature, contained in Annexes 2 and 3 to document CoP19 Doc 84.1, with the corrections contained in the addendum to that document, were agreed by consensus. 28 new, revised, or renewed draft decisions contained in document CoP19 COM 1.9 were also agreed by consensus. Finally, it was agreed to delete decisions 17.312 Rev CoP18 and 18.315, also by consensus. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. The floor is open. I see no requests for the floor. The Committee 1 recommendations are adopted. We're now on 84.2, standard nomenclature for Diptectrix species. I give the floor to the Committee 1 Chair.
Thank you, Chair. As the inclusion of this genus in Appendix 2 had been agreed by the committee, a draft standard nomenclature reference for the genus contained in document CoP19 COM 1 Rec 5 was agreed by consensus. A related draft decision found in the comments of the Secretariat in document CoP19 Doc 84.2, with amendments recorded in document CoP19 COM 1 Rec 5, was also agreed by consensus. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Chair. Would any delegation like to take the floor? I see no requests for the floor. The Committee 1 recommendations are adopted. We're now on 84.3, standard nomenclature for Kaya species. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. As the inclusion of this genus in Appendix 2 had been agreed by the committee, the standard nomenclature reference Plants of the World Online was agreed for the genus Kaya by consensus. A related draft decision found in the comments of the Secretariat in document CoP19 Doc 84.3 was also agreed by consensus. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. Would any delegation like to take the floor? I see no requests for the floor. The Committee 1 recommendations are adopted. We're now on 84.4, standard nomenclature for rhodiola species. I give the floor to the Committee 1 chair.
Thank you, Chair. The draft decision in the comments of the Secretariat in document CoP19, Doc 84.4, was agreed by consensus. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. The floor is open. I see no requests for the floor. The Committee 1 recommendations are adopted. This brings us to item 85, annotations. 85.1, report of the Standing Committee. I give the floor to the chair of the Standing Committee.
Thank you, Chair. Draft amendments to the interpretation section of the appendices and 3 draft revised decisions found in document CoP19, COM 1.12 were agreed by consensus. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, sir. Would any delegation like to take the floor on this item? I see no request for the floor. The Committee 1 recommendations are adopted. We're now on 85.2, information system for trade in specimens of CITES listed tree species. I give the floor to the chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. 1 new and 1 revised draft decision found in Annex 1 to document CoP19, Doc 85.2, with an amendment recorded in document COM 1 Rec 1, were agreed by consensus.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. The floor is open. I see no requests for the floor. The Committee 1 recommendations are adopted. We're now on 85.3. Annotations, informal review mechanism of existing and proposed annotations. I give the floor to the chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. 2 draft decisions in Annex 1 to document CoP19, Doc 85.3, with amendments recorded in COM 1 Rec 1, were agreed. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, sir. The floor is open. I give the floor to the chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. I forgot to go over the page, and it was also agreed to delete decisions 18.316, 18.318, 18.319, and 18.320. All of this by consensus. Thank you, Chair, and apologies.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. The floor is open. I see no requests for the floor. The Committee 1 recommendations are adopted, and we're now going to move on to 87, products containing specimens of Appendix 2 orchids. I give the floor to the chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. Draft decisions contained in document CoP19 Doc 86 with amendments recorded in CoP19 COM 2 Rec 15 were agreed by consensus. The deletion of decisions 18.327 to 18.330 was agreed by consensus.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. The floor is open. I see no requests for the floor. The Committee 2 recommendations are adopted.
Ok, reanudamos la sesión.
Let's resume work. We are going to come back to item 8, the language strategy for the convention. I would like to give the floor to the chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. I regret that Committee 2 was not able to conclude our discussions on this matter within our allotted time. When we concluded our session yesterday afternoon, I invited Kuwait to submit a ComDoc with their proposal on the Document 8 language strategy for the convention. That ComDoc has been published on the CITES website in the 3 official languages as of this morning.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to give the floor to Kuwait so that they can introduce the document that has been made available on the CITES website in all 3 languages. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'm speaking on behalf of the Arabic-speaking countries present in the room, which are Algeria, Morocco, Syria, Bahrain, Tunisia, Qatar, Jordan, Yemen, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Oman, Mauritania, Somalia, Comoros, and Kuwait. First, I would like to thank all the parties who spoke up yesterday to support the multi-language and support our need to have equality for better communication and understanding of the Convention. Really, the tremendous support we get yesterday is so much appreciated. Sincerely, we thank you all. As well, we thank the working group on the budget and the chair of the working group for their effort and guidance. We understand the critical burden, including the country's financial crisis because of the difficult time that the world went through the last 2 years. So, adding to that, we have a different proposal as a start for the strategy, for the language strategy, and it is as follows. We submitted a document which is in the CoP19 Plenary 1. It's a draft decision on the language strategy for the Convention, directed to the CITES Secretariat 19AA. The Secretariat shall, subject to external resources, A, provide for the translation of all valid resolutions and decisions into the 3 additional languages, Arabic, Chinese, and Russian, drawing on the available informal and official translation. And B, arrange for translation of the CITES website into these additional languages. Directed to the Standing Committee 19BB, the Standing Committee shall, as its 77th meeting, consider the future approach to the language strategy of the Convention in order to provide interpretation in all 6 languages at the meetings of the Conference of the Parties, with the emphasis on the interpretation at the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, subject to external funding. This is my speech, and this is the proposal for the way forward for a Document 8. Thank you, Chair.
Gracias.
Thank you, Kuwait. Mali, you have the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mali and all countries that were just mentioned would like to support the proposal made by Kuwait. With respect to Arabic, Chinese, and Russian, we really do support the idea that the Secretariat take measures so that they can become official CITES languages. Thank you, Madam.
Gracias, Mali.
Thank you, Mali. Egypt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair.
Arabic-speaking countries find some difficulty in interacting with the events of the conference and the documents and the technologies related to the conference. The number of these countries exceeds 27 countries. And we hope for assistance in adopting the Arabic language, even partially, as Kuwait has indicated. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Egypt. Russia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, the question of multilingualism has been a recurring issue on the agendas of many bodies of United Nations system organizations. Using 6 languages is a source of better understanding among the parties. The prime objective of language arrangements for any meeting should be to provide to all participants an equal opportunity to contribute to the legislative process and to the formulation of the meeting's outputs. In order to reduce current imbalances in the use of languages within CITES, the Russian Federation asks parties to study presented by Kuwait and supported by Russia and China paras. We also would like to draw your attention that the inclusion of the Russian language would not only benefit Russia, but also broad number of countries, most prominently from the CITES region. If we are talking about good practices, the work within the Convention on Biological Diversity is a good example of the use of all UN languages, allowing a high number of national experts to be adequately, efficiently, and impactfully included in the work of the Convention. Dear colleagues, we believe that such an all-comprising approach will greatly benefit the work of the Convention by a greater engagement of national experts at all levels. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Russia. Niger has the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair. CITES adopting more working languages would broaden the scope of the convention. CITES would be able to reach out to more people who would be able to help with the implementation of the convention. That is why we support the proposal made by Kuwait. Thank you, Madam.
Gracias, Niger.
Thank you, Niger. The United States has the floor.
Thank you. The United States would like to express appreciation for the willingness of delegates to be flexible and find a way forward on this important issue that all can support. We look forward to the improved accessibility that these decisions will provide and to continued engagement in this discussion. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, United States. Burkina Faso has the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair. Burkina Faso is well aware of the financial and logistic implications of the language strategy proposed by Kuwait. We feel that such a strategy would broaden the scope of the convention. More people would better understand what CITES is about, how it works, and what its decisions are. That is why we strongly support the Kuwait proposal. Thank you.
Gracias, Burkina Faso.
Thank you, Burkina Faso. I now give the floor to Togo, to be followed by Chile, and I'm going to close the list. I'm now closing the list. Togo, you have the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to join others who have taken the floor in support of this proposal. We do feel that it is to CITES' advantage. We have here a proposal that would involve more people in CITES work. Thank you. Thank you, Togo. I would like to invite the next parties to be brief. Chile has the floor, to be followed by Senegal. Thank you, Madam Chair. Chile considers that multilingualism is one of the pillars of multilateralism, and it is a way for us to work. If we were to strengthen our multilingualism, it would strengthen our decisions and our discussions. Greater multilingualism would ensure that we became more effective with respect to the implementation of our decisions and our activities. We do understand the budgetary constraints we face. We do support the proposal made by Kuwait with one amendment. Rather than talking about external funding, we would like to have extra budgetary contributions. Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Chile. I now give the floor to the European Union, to be followed by the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
The EU and its member states would like to thank Kuwait for the proposal. We agree with the draft decisions proposed in the document and hope that they will contribute to a better implementation of the convention. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, European Union. The Democratic Republic of the Congo has the floor. Thank you, Madam. The Democratic Republic of the Congo does feel that we cannot remain stuck in 1973 with our original working languages, and we therefore support Kuwait's proposal to strengthen multilingualism, which is already practiced elsewhere. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you. I give the floor to Liechtenstein, followed by Senegal, and they will be the last speakers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We thank the proponents of the proposal for the flexibility shown. It goes without saying that we are fully in line with the proposal. On a personal note, I'm very happy to see that that issue comes to somehow a satisfactory close. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Gracias, Liechtenstein.
Thank you, Liechtenstein. I give the floor to Senegal, the last speaker. Thank you very much, Chair. Senegal wishes to, first of all, congratulate the authors of this proposal, which aims to include new languages in the work of our convention. We believe that this is the right path to follow because it will increase the visibility of CITES and will also facilitate its implementation. These parties speaking these languages represent a significant share of the CITES population, so we support this amendment. Thank you.
Gracias,
Thank you, Senegal. We adopt the recommendations of Committee 2 with the amendment of Chile.
Las leo. No, muéstrame para leerlas. En cuanto al proyecto de...
As regards the draft decision on the language strategy for the convention, I will read out the proposal. Directed to the Secretariat, 19.8a. The Secretariat shall, subject to, with Chile's amendment, extra budgetary contributions, which will replace external resources. A, provide for the translation of all valid resolutions and decisions into the 3 additional languages, Arabic, Chinese, and Russian, drawing on available informal and official translations. And B, arrange for the translation of the CITES website into these additional languages. Directed to the Standing Committee, 19BB. The Standing Committee shall, at its 77th meeting, consider the future approach to the language strategy of the Convention in order to provide interpretation in all 6 languages at the meetings of the Conference of the Parties, with emphasis on the interpretation at the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, subject to extra budgetary contributions.
Seguimos al siguiente.
Let us move on to the next item on our agenda. 87, amendments to Resolution Conf 924, Rev CoP17, and 87.1, proposed amendments to Resolution Conf 9.24, Rev CoP17. I give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. Proposed amendments to Resolution Conference 924, Rev CoP17, on criteria for amendment of Appendices 1 and 2 were rejected after a vote with 31 parties in favour, 86 against and 11 abstentions. Thank you.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any requests for the floor? China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. China would like to make a correction to the record. First, China did not withdraw the new draft decision it proposed as a compromised way forward, as noted in the summary report, COP19, COP1, Reg 12. Second, it is our understanding that the proposal proposed by China was not accepted by Committee 1. Muchas gracias, Señora Presidenta.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Gracias, China.
Thank you, China. We have taken note of your comments. And as I see no further requests for the floor, the recommendations of Committee 1 are adopted. Now, we move on to 87.2, aquatic species listed in the CITES appendices. Proposals for a new approach to the listing of sharks and rays. Chair of Committee 1, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. 3 draft decisions found in document COP19, COM 1.7 were agreed by consensus.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Would any delegation like to take the floor? I see no requests for the floor, therefore the recommendations of Committee 1 are adopted.
La conferencia.
The Conference of Parties will now consider the recommendations of Committee 1 relating to the proposals to amend the appendices. I invite the Chair of Committee 1 to share the recommendations with the Conference of the Parties.
Presidente, un segundo.
Just a few moments, Chair, please.
I'm going to change it to English. So going back, we missed one point, point 88. Reservations entered after the 18th meeting of the Conference of Parties. I will give the floor to Chair of Committee 2.
Thank you, Chair. The committee agreed the amendments to Resolution Conf 11.21, Rev COP 18 on use of annotations in Appendices 1 and 2, Resolution Conf 4.6, Rev COP 18, submission of draft resolutions, draft decisions and other documents for meetings of the Conference of the Parties, Resolution Conf 4.25, Rev CoP18 on reservations, as contained in document CoP19, Committee 2.4. And with your indulgence, Chair, I'll just note that that's the final recommendation of Committee 2 to the COP.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for introducing the last item considered by Committee 2, and thank you for your support. Would any delegation like to take the floor? I see no requests for the floor, therefore the recommendations of Committee 2 are adopted. Now we'll move on to the proposals to amend Appendices 1 and 2, and I'll give the floor to the Chair of Committee 1.
Thank you, Chair. Proposal CoP19, Prop 1, Rev 1, on Hippopotamus amphibius, to retain listing on Appendix 2 with the following annotation: a zero export quota for wild specimens traded for commercial purposes. Proposal CoP19, Prop 1, Rev 1, was rejected after a vote with 56 parties in favour, 56 against and 13 abstentions. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. I already know that parties wish to take the floor. Togo, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair, and parties for considering reopening the debate on Proposal 1 on the common hippopotamus. I will keep this intervention short and to the point. As I'm sure everyone in this room is aware, there were many interruptions on Friday afternoon that affected the flow of the debate. These interruptions included the unprecedented adjournment of the debate for about 30 minutes due to an emergency that caused the evacuation of the Committee 1 room, and technical or interpretation problems which caused a 5-minute halt to the debate. Unresolved technical problems resulted in my country, Togo, not being able to cast a vote for our own proposal. Additionally, there was some confusion among parties due to interpretation between languages. Although we thank the interpreters for their remarkable work during these debates, on numerous occasions, interpretations were inconsistent with the language of the proposal as amended by the co-proponents. Specifically, it seems that it was not clear that the proposed zero export quota applied to wild specimens traded for only commercial purposes. No other purposes of trade, such as personal or hunting trophy purposes, would be affected by this proposal. These issues affected the mood in the room and possibly led to confusion about the proposal. Therefore, reopening the debate would allow for a debate and a vote on Proposal 1 as amended by the co-proponents without these interruptions. Thank you, Chair.
Gracias.
Thank you, Togo. This is a motion to reopen a debate. Therefore, I request the technicians to please clear the screen. And if another party wishes to support Togo, could you please display these parties? Niger, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair. We wish to reiterate our support for Togo's proposal to reopen this debate. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Niger. Technicians, could you please clear the screen? Parties who oppose to reopening the debate. Not observers. Botswana, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Botswana would wish to oppose the motion to reopen the vote.
Estados Unidos.
The United States? No, the United Republic of Tanzania. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The United Republic of Tanzania oppose the motion to reopen the debate.
We have two parties supporting reopening the debate and two parties opposed to reopening the debate. Therefore, we shall have a vote. We will vote on proposal CoP19, proposal 1. This is a vote on a motion to reopen a debate. Therefore, we need 1/3 of votes for this motion to be accepted. Could the European Union please tell us how they will be voting?
Chair, for motions for reopening as procedural motions, is the member states individually who will cast the vote. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, European Union. Could I please invite you to take your seats as we shall be proceeding with a vote. Technicians, could you please give me the green light when you're ready for the vote?
Gracias.
Thank you to the technicians. Parties, you have 40 seconds to cast your vote. Voting is now open.
Se han agotado los 40.
The 40 seconds are up. Could the technicians please display the results on the screen?
Como ven, queda.
As you can see, the motion to reopen the debate on this item is accepted with a 1/3 majority. Could the technicians please display the individual votes of parties on the screen?
Gracias a los...
Thank you. We have now seen the results and individual votes, and we will reopen the debate on Proposal 1. I give the floor to Togo. Thank you, Chair. Now, it must be acknowledged that in our sub-region, there were lots of mammal species who are gradually going extinct. Yesterday we talked about the cheetah. And if you look at our sub-region, populations are on the decrease. The giraffe can only be found in Niger nowadays. And in my country, almost all big cats have disappeared, and the two flagship species we have left are elephants and hippos. Therefore, we urge you to support us to protect this species. We're requesting a zero export quota applied to wild specimens traded for only commercial purposes. Please help us to protect the few specimens we have left. Thank you.
Gracias, Togo.
Thank you, Togo. I give the floor to Benin, followed by Mali. Thank you, Chair. I'm making this statement on behalf of Benin and the 9 co-proponent parties, Burkina Faso, Central African Republic, Gabon, Guinea, Liberia, Mali, Niger, Senegal, and Togo. This proposal is to retain the common hippopotamus on CITES Appendix 2 with a zero quota for trade in wild specimens for commercial purposes. Our statement will address comments we heard during the debate on our proposal in Committee 1 with the intention of bringing clarity to parties about our proposal. The European Union said that populations in some range states are stable or increasing, and that it is from these countries that most trade occurs. Chair, according to information in the CITES trade database, only 6 hippo range states exported hippo specimens for commercial purposes from 2009 to 2018 and had stable or increasing hippo populations. Meanwhile, this trade is making wildlife trafficking easier by providing a conduit for parts of poached hippos to enter the trade. It hardly seems sensible to base a decision on the needs of 6 parties when the remainder of hippo range states do not engage in commercial trade. The EU also said that international trade is not considered a significant threat to these species and that this threat has remained stable or declined over the last 10 years. But they were referring to legal trade, not illegal trade, which is the problem that our proposal seeks to address with this zero quota. The EU noted that several range states spoke against this proposal. However, in fact, most range states that spoke were in favor of the proposal. This difference of opinion is therefore not a good reason for the EU to oppose the proposal. If the EU is concerned about honoring the diverse range states' views on this proposal, then perhaps we should leave it up to range states to decide rather than siding with one view or the other. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Gracias, Benin.
Thank you, Benin. This is a motion to reopen the debate. Therefore, I'll ask you to be more concise, if possible, with your statements. Mali, followed by Mauritania. You have the floor. Thank you, Chair. In line with what has been said by previous speakers, Madam Speaker, we also held talks with the EU in order to raise awareness on the state of our hippopotamus populations in our aquatic ecosystems today. Not one country in West Africa today can claim that their hippo populations are not under threat. Climate change today is a major issue for our populations, but poaching has exacerbated these issues. We must take into consideration all of the efforts that our states are undertaking. The EU supports us in conserving our natural resources. And what we're proposing in the face of this situation should be accepted and supported by the EU, given the development resources they provide us already. It would yield positive outcomes, and the EU would see the concrete result of its investment. We're asking for the zero export quota to be accepted in order to protect our populations. As we have always said, Madam Chair, CITES is based on consensus and dialogue. We've never denied this. However, when it comes to matters of major concern, we need to listen to every voice. We need to take into account the efforts that have been made and also what has been said by the previous speakers. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Marley. I'll ask you once again to be brief, if possible, in your statements. Mauritania, followed by the Congo. You have the floor. Thank you, Chair. Mauritania wishes to recall that during the Committee 1 discussions, we stated that after 21 years, the population of Mauritania were able to see with their own eyes a hippo on land. And this is thanks to the outstanding support that we received for this year. Now, Mauritania, thanks to this support, has been able to strengthen its efforts to conserve this species. And in line with this, we strongly support this proposal. This is an opportunity to contribute to global efforts to preserve biodiversity. Thank you. Thank you, Mauritania. The Congo, followed by the Central African Republic. Thank you, Chair. Congo will not change its position. The Republic of the Congo has stated that international trade can lead to a number of issues, and the Congo cannot support mafia-led criminal networks that threaten the survival of our species. This is the Congo's position, once again, Madam Chair. Thank you. I would request the co-proponents, Togo, who tabled the motion to reopen this debate, to please take the floor to tell us what we're debating. The initial proposal was to move it from Appendix 2 to Appendix 1, but you're talking about a zero quota. Togo, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair. Initially, we had asked for the species to be listed in the Appendix 1. However, given the discussions, we requested retaining the common hippopotamus on CITES Appendix 2 with a zero quota for trade in wild specimens for commercial purposes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Togo. Gracias, Togo.
Thank you, Togo. I'd like to give the floor to the European Union.
Thank you, Chair. I understand the reopening is on the basis of the same proposal that has been discussed in Committee 1 and rejected by Committee 1. So I think, let me, with your indulgence, explain the position of the EU and its member states, given that it has been referred to in previous interventions. So the EU and its member states agree that improved conservation measures are needed for Hippo. As we stated in our intervention in Committee 1, the available data and scientific information indicates that the Hippo populations in different regions are in different conservation status and face different challenges. Therefore, also the approach to their management needs to be adapted to each specific situation. Regarding the proposal to adopt a zero export quota for trade in wild specimens traded for commercial purposes for all range states, we continue to think that this could risk undermining sustainable management of Hippo in those countries with large Hippo populations, where trade in parts and products, as well as legal hunting, forms part of the species conservation. Thereby, this proposal, if adopted, could even have negative consequences for the conservation of species. Therefore, we are convinced that a zero export quota is not an appropriate measure to effectively address the concerns raised by the proponents. Moreover, we do not support imposing, against their will and without a clear conservation benefit, a zero export quota to those range states with stable or increasing populations of Hippo. Some of these range states expressed clearly their opposition during the discussion in Committee 1. In order to address the concerns raised by proponents and to advance in the conservation of Hippo, let me recall the proposal that we did in Committee 1 to agree a set of decisions that, in particular, these decisions would invite all Hippo range states to establish annual national export quotas set at sustainable levels. This can include zero export quotas for those populations which cannot sustain any offtake, and conservative quotas for stable or growing populations. Quotas should be based on recent population data and adaptive management. Setting such quotas would not only ensure sustainability of trade, but also reduce the potential risk of illegal ivory trade among range states, which is one of the concerns expressed by the proponents. Furthermore, it represents a tool to mitigate human-wildlife conflict and to support livelihoods of local communities. We hope that the proponents can support these draft decisions, because we firmly believe these COP decisions would contribute to the conservation of Hippo. Thank you, Chair.
Gracias.
Thank you, European Union. I give the floor to the Central African Republic. Thank you, Madam Chair. The CAR is a country with a declining hippo population. This is because of poaching. We all know that hippos reproduce very slowly, and there are problems with habitat loss and destruction. In previous statements, we have supported the proposal before us. That is to say that hippopotamuses be Appendix 1 listed with a 0 export quota for wild specimens. This to ensure full protection for the species. The Central African Republic supports this proposal. We would like to see the hippopotamus listed in Appendix 1. Thank you.
Gracias, República Central.
Thank you, CAR. I now give the floor to South Africa.
Thank you, Chair. South Africa would like to align itself with the comments made by the EU when this document was first heard in Committee 1, where the proponents will remain with a 0 quota for export for commercial purposes for the proponents of this proposal, and for the Southern African populations to remain under Appendix 2 with no quota, as the populations of Southern Africa are stable and increasing, and we see no concern in terms of illegal trade or illegal movement of hippo in Southern Africa, and the consequences of the listing will be dire to our populations and our livelihoods within the Southern Africa, and we'll appreciate if the parties can assist us in this regard. Thank you, Chair.
Gracias.
Thank you, South Africa. I give the floor to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Thank you, Madam. The Democratic Republic of the Congo agrees with South Africa. CITES is not in a position to wave a magic wand and solve the poaching problem that Togo and other West African colleagues have mentioned. Our hippos are not threatened by international trade. That is why I wish to say that we reject the proposal amended by Togo. We would suggest that if the representatives of West African countries want to protect their populations, they should introduce a 0 export quota, and that would mean that those of us in Southern Africa would continue with our stable hippo populations. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you. We seem to have reopened the debate that took place in Committee 1. Parties are divided on this issue. I have a question for the European Union. You mentioned a proposal. Could I ask if you have an amendment to propose, or was that just a recommendation? You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I think we clearly continue to oppose the proposal that is on the table. We do not support this proposal and will oppose to it. What I have commented is a set of decisions that we propose as an alternative for the proponents to consider as an alternative to their proposal. But it's not a formal amendment of their proposal. Is just a suggestion of a way forward that would contribute to the conservation of the hippo. Thank you.
Okay, vuelvo a...
Thank you. I would like to turn to Togo, and I would like some indication of how they want to move on this. Thank you, Madam Chair. We do not agree with the suggestions made by the European Union. We feel that they are not really taking our motivation into account or the reasons why we're making this proposal. We want to stop illegal trade. We have made a proposal based on the most recent and reliable data. A lot of the information in our proposal is based on the latest version of the IUCN list from 2016. The IUCN says that hippo poaching is the main threat facing hippopotami. The situation has been peer-reviewed since 2016, and there too there are reports on the need to fight hippo poaching. The European Union has suggested that legal trade be maintained, and that was what we had in their draft decisions, but that would do nothing about poaching or traffickers who launder hippo ivory through legal trade. We therefore are not in a position to agree with the European Union. We would not like to see their decisions. We would like to we would accept an abstention on our proposal, but we cannot go along with what they're suggesting. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Togo. We do take your points, sir, but my question to you is the following. Would you like to vote? Or if not, how would you like us to continue our consideration of this item? Thank you. You have the floor. Thank you, madam. We would like to have a vote on this matter. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you. I have many countries on the speakers list. There is a clear division of positions represented in the room. I would therefore suggest that we vote on this. I would invite parties to please be seated. This is a vote on CoP19 Proposal 1. And as this is a proposal to amend the appendices and has to be approved by a 2/3 majority. The European Union vote will be clarified by the EU. You have the floor.
Given that this is a proposal under Agenda Point 89, according to the Information Document 27 that we have produced, the vote of the EU and its member states will be casted by the EU delegation. Thank you, Chair.
Gracias.
Thank you. This is Proposal 1, Rev 1. I misspoke. Israel, you have a point of order?
Yes, thank you, Chair. That was just what we were asking, to be sure that we're talking about Revision 1 to Proposal 1. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Israel. Sorry for that. Bueno, veo a todas.
Parties are seated. Could the technicians please tell me if you're ready for us to vote?
We're prepared, Chairman.
Gracias.
Thank you. Parties, you have 40 seconds to vote. Voting is now open.
Se han agotado los 40 segundos.
40 seconds are up. Voting is now closed.
Technicians,
Could I ask the technicians to please show the result of the vote on the screen?
la apertura de la propuesta no fue adoptada.
The proposal has not been adopted by a majority of 2/3 of those voting. Could I ask the technicians to now show the parties' votes? Thank you.
Gracias a los técnicos.
I'd like to thank the technicians. I would now like to give the floor to the Committee 1 chair so we can continue our consideration of amendments to the appendices. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. CoP19 Proposal 2 was for Ceratotherium simon to transfer the population of Namibia from Appendix 1 to Appendix 2 with the following annotation: for the exclusive purpose of allowing international trade in A, live animals for in situ conservation only, and B, hunting trophies. All other specimens shall be deemed to be specimens of species included in Appendix 1, and trade in them shall be regulated accordingly. Proposal CoP19 Prop 2 was amended to transfer the population of Ceratotherium simon in Namibia from Appendix 1 to Appendix 2 with the following annotation: for the exclusive purpose of allowing international trade in live animals for in situ conservation only, and only within the species' natural and historical range in Africa. The amended proposal was agreed after a vote with 83 in favour, 31 against, and 13 abstentions. However, I do just want to make a remark to try and clarify what I think was the intent of Committee 1. The way the annotation is worded at the moment, and taking account of the definition of species in Article 1 of the Convention, where a species can be means any species, subspecies, or geographically separate population thereof. This annotation could be interpreted to apply only to the natural and historical range of Ceratotherium simon, the subspecies. I think it was a clear intent of Committee 1 with the amendment that international trade in live animals might be permitted within the natural and historical range of the full species, Ceratotherium simon. With that in mind, I suggest that we could make that intent clearer by amending the annotation a view the parties agreed, so that it read, for the exclusive purpose of allowing international trade in live animals for in situ conservation only, and only within the natural and historical range of Ceratotherium simum in Africa. And with that insertion, the word species would be deleted. So that was my understanding of the intent of Committee 1. I think it was the understanding shared as a whole, and by making this simple change, I think we would have an annotation that fully captured the intent of the annotation. However, Chair, I leave it to you to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Having listened to the chair of Committee 1, we would tend to agree with his interpretation of the amendment. I would like to ask parties if they would like to take the floor on this matter. I don't see any requests for the floor. The CoP19 Prop 2 has been adopted as amended. Thank you.
Seguimos.
We are now
Vamos a la propuesta.
We are now on Prop 3. I would like to give the floor to the chair of Committee 1 on this proposal to do with the white rhinoceros. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Proposal CoP19 Prop 3 was for Ceratotherium simum to remove the existing annotation on the Appendix 2 listing of Eswatini's population. An amended proposal to CoP19 Prop 3 was rejected after a vote with 15 parties in favour, 85 against, and 26 abstentions. Thank you, Chair.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask if any delegation would like to take the floor on this? If not, the Committee 1 recommendation is adopted. That's on CoP19 Prop 3. We will move to the next one, CoP19 Prop 4, African elephant. The chair of Committee 1 has the floor.
Thank you, Chair. CoP19 Prop 4 was for Loxodonta africana to amend annotation 2 pertaining to the populations of Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. And in the interest of time, I will avoid reading out the entire annotation. Proposal CoP19 Prop 4 concerning the African elephant Loxodonta africana was rejected after a vote with 15 in favour, 83 against, and 17 abstentions. Thank you, Chair.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you. Could I ask? Yes, Zimbabwe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We rise according to Rule 21 to reopen debate on document CoP19 Prop 4 to reduce the scope and to amend our original proposal by focusing on amendment of annotation 2E only. Madam Chair, our current annotation excludes Zimbabwe in the commercial trade in leather goods whilst allowing Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa. We therefore seek uniformity in this text for ease of implementation. In this regard, we are proposing to remove the last part of this sentence and for non-commercial purposes for Zimbabwe in annotation 2E, so that it now reads as follows: trade in leather goods for commercial or non-commercial purposes for Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. We kindly request parties to support this simple request. We so submit, Chair.
Gracias.
Thank you, Zimbabwe. Could I ask technicians to please clear the screen? We need one more party to take the floor in favor of reopening the debate. South Africa, you have the floor.
Thanks, Chair. We would like to support Zimbabwe's proposals to reopen the debate. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, South Africa. Could I ask if any party is opposed to the reopening of this debate? Mali, you have the floor. Thank you, Madam. Mali is categorically opposed to the reopening of this debate. Thank you, Madam.
Gracias.
Thank you, Mali. We've had 2 parties in favor and 2 opposed. We're going to have a vote on this matter. This is a vote on CoP19 Prop 4 on African elephants. This is a vote on whether or not the debate should be reopened. We need 1/3 of the votes, as it's on reopening the debate. Could the EU tell us how their vote will be counted? Thank you.
As with any other motion for reopening, is the member states individually casting the vote. Thank you, Chair.
Gracias.
Thank you, European Union. Could I ask parties to please be seated? And I would also like to ask the observers to move to the back of the room.
Seat and observers in the back end. Parties, please take your seat, and observers in the back end as we're going to a vote. Gracias.
Thank you. Could I ask the technicians to let me know when they're ready for us to vote?
We're ready, Chair.
Gracias, técnicos.
Thank you. Parties, you have 40 seconds to vote. Voting is now open.
Se han agotado los 40 segundos.
40 seconds are up. Voting is now closed. Technicians, please show the result on the screen.
La apertura del debate se aprobó.
There is one third of the votes for reopening the debate. Technicians, please show how the individual parties voted.
Gracias, técnico.
I thank the technicians. It is now 5 p.m.
Se suspende.
Therefore, I'm suspending the session and we will resume at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning with the debate on proposal CoP19, proposal 4.